Okay, Happy New Year. If it's still New Year's Eve where you are, or even New Year's Day, Happy New Year. I hope 2020 is better than 2019. Obviously, we've got a lot of sport to look forward to in the next 12 months, including the 2020 World Championship Ice Hockey, the 2020 Euro tournament, and the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo. These are three really big events. Obviously, I've just done my Six Nations preview video. That's going to be a really exciting and interesting tournament because I don't really think there's an out-and-out favourite this coming Six Nations. I think it's so open. There's obviously the Stanley Cup playoffs. You've got the NFL Super Bowl in February as well. So there's a lot happening. You've got all the major tennis and golf opens as well. So there's all these major sporting events coming up. But obviously, there's some big sports news at the moment. West Ham, yet another club to sack a manager, and David Moyes has been announced as the new West Ham manager for the second stint in charge of that club, and West Ham fans are dismayed by this. He was heavily linked with the Everton job when that was vacant before Ancelotti was appointed. For me, that's a step backwards for West Ham. The issue with West Ham is managerial consistency. Now, Pellegrini didn't have the best run this season, and there were issues. But to replace him with David Moyes so short out from the transfer window is a massive problem. For me, that doesn't. If you are going to replace a manager, at least do it 2-3 weeks before the transfer window opens. That does not give a new manager time to really assess the squad and assess where changes need to be made. Now, there's a lot of changes that do need to be made to this West Ham squad. I don't think David Moyes is the right guy to be appointed as manager for this club that could be facing a relegation fight. Let's not kid ourselves. I don't think Ancelotti's the right guy for Everton per se. He's never been in a relegation fight before. Mikel Arteta at Arsenal, it's his first managerial gig as the senior guy, not as the assistant. So there's some interesting things to look at, and we can chart the progress of these new managers who've been appointed in the last few weeks through the transfer window and for the rest of the season. Now, apologies for not doing any live streams or video uploads for the last week or so. I have actually been battling a chest infection, and I've had issues with leaks in the flat and heating problems and not being very well, which is a problem. But these managerial changes in the Premier League, and also the debate about VAR. If you take VAR out the Premier League, Liverpool are still top, but only by 6 points. So it has had an effect on Liverpool, being as far ahead as they are, but not as much as you think. But the VAR debate rumbles on. Other sports use video reviewing and video officials far more effectively. And other sports have a lot less money to spend in order to use video officials effectively. Football, while VAR is a good idea, it's been badly implemented by all leagues and at international level as well. What we have noticed in the Euro 2020 qualifiers is they've not been using it, which is really surprising. Does that mean in Euro 2020 we're not having VAR, or are they going to be changing the remit of what VAR looks like? Now, that also means the rulebook needs to be updated. Offside and handball are two key areas. We saw with the Women's World Cup this summer just gone that the handball, clear and obvious and deliberate, and offside were really, really, open for what is offside now, what is handball. So I think they need to simplify the rules in those areas, and also they need to relook at what the remit of VAR is. Casey, yes, Happy New Year as well. Obviously, I'm getting there. This chesty cough is sort of possibly a chest infection, so we'll see how I feel tomorrow. And if I'm feeling worse, I might have to go to the old doctors. Yes, I do think you do need the Department of Player Safety. The issue with having it in such a low level is because it's not a televised league and there's not a lot of video cameras necessarily watching every single game. You've got to go on the referees' reports, and there isn't the money. And we already have seen in a couple of years ago the issues with the Elite League, the EIHL, Department of Player Safety, having been completely restructured midway through a season, and that making news across the Atlantic in North America on the American and Canadian broadcasters discussing the Belfast Giants Sheffield Steelers incident and the aftermath of that. But yes, player discipline and player safety is vital in any sport. And the bodies that go up, like the citing commissioner in rugby, the disciplinary panel with the FA in football. Yes, I think a lot of them do make some weird disciplinary decisions when it comes to suspensions and after match retrospective banning. We've seen it in the NHL, some really bizarre officiating. John Tortorella obviously having his latest rant after the Columbus defeat 2 nights ago. Korpisalo's out for up to 6 weeks with a knee injury. He's not very happy with how the game was officiated, and rightly so. but he's going to cop a big fine from the NHL. We've seen football players be critical of the FA and VAR. They're going to cop a big fine as well. So while I like the fact that you have players and managers who do show a bit of passion and speak their minds, you have to allow them to do that. You have to allow sometimes players and managers to be critical of the governing bodies. Otherwise, you don't get change that's required. There's a lot of instances going on with racism as well, when players walk off the field. You know, the Chelsea-Tottenham racism scandal, which I was going to do a video on, but then I thought, actually, this is quite a divisive topic. Again, the way the FA is coming out with these strongly worded statements and not taking any action. Now, we do have the PFA. The PFA is the Professional Footballers Association, which is basically their trade union. One way to possibly speed up any action from government or the FA is to go on strike. You don't go to work or go to school to be racially abused. It's simple. And people are going on, but these football players are paid hundreds of thousands a week. Not in the lower leagues, they're not. Not in the non-league, where there's been a rise in incidents the last couple of years. So, in my eyes, if the players were to stage a 48-hour strike on a match weekend, that would get things going, because that's going to cost the Premier League, the Championship, and the non-league money. I think. And then into your response, yes, but the footage needs to be clear, and you need to have multiple camera angles. And at that point, absolutely, I can understand why you want to have a Department of Player Safety to do with ice hockey at the lower levels. There are some I haven't been to many games this season because I've moved and I've not been well and I've been working a lot. The aim is in the new year to possibly catch a game here or there if I can. But I am aware of some rather nasty action taking place on the ice, some really bad suspendable offences. And yeah, we do need to improve the discipline of players at the lower levels and the safety of players at the lower levels. We've seen some pretty bad instances, not just in British ice hockey, but across, even up to the NHL level, we've seen some pretty bad instances of foul play. But again, the consistency of suspension as well is another thing that needs to be looked at. And this is across all sports. If you're going to suspend one player for one thing, and then the same instance happen, let's say, 6 weeks later, another player does exactly the same thing, but gets a different suspension, you have to ask yourself why. But there is ways of doing it, but I do think, again, money needs to be pumped in and an actual board to sit there and review every incident. Because they have to go by referees' reports. They have to go by what the referee says and reports, or the two refs report. Yeah. I think the fighting rule now is crap as well. I think you have to acquire so many fights before you actually get banned. But again, I think you need to look at why that's been put in place, and do the fans agree with it? Do the players agree with it? I think it's going to be a part of hockey, I think last couple of seasons fights were on the up in the lower levels. Fighting was on the up. I think at the end of the day, I'm not sure. I think knee-jerk reactions like this midway through a season, or things like that, don't help. I think you need to review at the end of each season. You need to review what players' feedback, fan feedback as well, I think is vital in any sport to progress. You need to have feedback from what fans, and fans on the whole in football don't like VAR. They think it's been badly implemented. It's not being used effectively. And this is at the top level, with all the video, all the TV cameras and all the technology available. They're getting it wrong. So you think having a Department of Player Safety at the lower levels and video reviewing of incidents, if they can't get it right at the top level in the NHL or the Premier League in football, or even in the Rugby Union World Cup we've just had, or the Rugby League, NRL and Super League, if they can't get it right at the top levels of sport, what hope do they have of getting it right at the lower levels of sport? You have to understand that point of view as well. I do think fan feedback is vital. I think player feedback is vital. You've also got to have, feedback from a variety of interested parties to get things where you want them to be. I will say this, though. I haven't watched as much British ice hockey as I would have liked. in recent weeks. The last 2 months have obviously moved, build up to move as well, saving money. So it's not been as something I've been able to really watch. But I will say this: I think the fighting rule thing. I think it's after so many fights, I think you get a suspension. I think it's after so many penalty minutes, you get a suspension as well. I think that's been a rule for a couple of years now. I think you're allowed so many fights before you get suspended. I do think that is a ludicrous rule, to be fair. But they've tried that as well with the NHL. I think after so many penalty minutes, you have to take a game suspension for persistent foul play, basically. I think that actually is a rule somewhere. After so many penalty minutes, you have to miss a game, I believe. But I'll have to check up on that one. I believe it was a rule pre-2004 lockout, but I have to check up on that. It was rarely enforced, though. On the rugby side of things, obviously we've had the Exeter Saracens brawl, and what I forgot to mention in the Six Nations preview video was how will the Saracens salary cap scandal and the struggles of the Leicester Tigers affect the England team? Because this is a team that has got a lot of Leicester and Saracens players built into it. And these two clubs are at the bottom of the Gallagher Premiership right now. One's been docked a hell of a lot of points and massively fined, and the other one's won one game all season. So if Leicester or Saracens are to get relegated, how does that affect England? That's a question that I should really look at, because a good part of the leadership core of this England Test side in rugby union is a Saracens core, and there are some key Leicester players in there as well who have played. Well, the EIHL obviously wants to continue to expand. In the last few years, it's lost two teams. One of them was an expansion team. One of them was an existing team that had always struggled. But I think the issue with British ice hockey has always been finances and financial stability. Now, I think we're getting there. I think we are getting there. I mean, I saw a Sheffield Steelers jersey today on my bin round in Surrey. So there is obviously clearly a hockey fan base in this country. There always has been. I mean, look, I'm wearing hockey gear, so. But I think finances are an issue, and the teams that have applied really do need to be financially viable. Because of the Edinburgh Capitals, because of the Milton Keynes Lightning, because of the Hull Stingrays, is another one from the past, even though the Hull Pirates are one of those teams that have been linked to the EIHL over the last couple of seasons. It has to be financially viable. Yes, the national side have massively improved over the last few years, and yes, we are playing at the World Championships again, and I'll be trying to watch as many of those games as possible. But again, financial viability and stability, and this is something that sports had a massive issue with across all sports and all formats. Is, do we have a salary cap? Do we not? And we're seeing with football in Europe, there is no salary cap, and you've got to look at the wages and the transfers; they are obscene. Whereas if you go over to the MLS or to the A-League and other sports, there are salary caps in place, and they seem to be, making more money. The money's shared more evenly from the TV revenues. Now, is it too late for a salary cap? Well, the Chinese Super League have brought one in from next season, and the average weekly wage is going to plummet. It's going to plummet. They're going to cap it. And there's a lot of players on big contracts, so they're going to cap the weekly wage. It's still at 45 grand a week in British pounds. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's not like a massive cap. I mean, there are some players on like nearly $500,000 a week, but this could mean that a lot of really talented players who've gone over to China for the money come back to European football. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. But the Chinese league has decided to bring in a salary cap of 45,000 a week. That's still massively overpaid. You're still going to be a multi-millionaire by the end of the year, even with taxes. But I think with the Elite League wanting to expand again, I think it's a great idea. But I think the teams that apply for this expansion or are approached, I think they have to look at the Elite League has to look at it with a good due process. Look at the team's financial position. Look at the fan base and how long they've been established in that area, and look at the fan base and look at the money that could come in. I think they've overreached themselves more than once, and the Edinburgh Capitals is a team that never really was successful, and Milton Keynes Lightning really overextended themselves and almost went tits up completely. So yeah, they have to be a bit careful about what teams they let in. We know that the Hull Pirates were interested. we know other teams also had discussions with the EIHL about expanding the league. On the Newcastle takeover thing, we've heard nothing. Quite simply, you mention this every time. That's your only comment is Newcastle takeover. Here's the thing: no one knows what's going on. I think it's not going to happen until the new year, if anything happens. But for the last 3 years, we've been in this position. He put the club up for sale 3 years ago. 2 years ago, Amanda Staveley. Last year, Peter Kenyon. Now there's been blah, 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 Saeed Al-Bahamidi, whatever relation of the guy who owns Man City. Peter Kenyon again. The club's been up for sale for 3 years. Multiple takeover attempts have all come in roughly at the same offer, and nothing's happened. So either Mike Ashley's trying to create interest in the club to get investment, or he actually wants to get rid of it, but he's just being a pain in the arse. Personally, I think Newcastle in the league are a stable mid-table club at the moment, but they need new investment. They need a new owner, plain and simple. Every time another takeover bid is announced, it seems to fizzle out. All the bids, apparently, Amanda Staveley's still interested. Peter Kenyon's had 2 bids now. I don't know what happens with Newcastle United. I don't know. Ben Bounds, he had a great World Championships in May. Obviously, he and Whistle are obviously the 2 best British goaltenders we have, although there are others in the Elite League and National League who are developing as well. I am surprised he wasn't picked up by a bigger European league, or even, let's say, the ECHL or AHL in North America as a free agent. But he decided to re-sign with Cardiff. You look at his age as well. He's older, so he's not like he's like 18, 19, 20. He's in his late. He's the same age as me, I believe. I think he's 30. So he's an older goaltender. I think the promotion relegation system wouldn't work in ice hockey. It never has. It never will. It just doesn't work very well. It sort of, to a point, does work on the continent, but at the same time, there's more money in the sport on the continent of Europe. But on the Ben Bounds thing, yeah, I am surprised he hasn't been, looked at by some of the bigger European leagues, or maybe the ECHL or AHL. But you got to look at his age. And that's a consideration. And the fact that he was not really willing to move outside the UK, and Cardiff offered him a contract and offered him to stay. And I think he took that opportunity with both hands. Although there are some other young British goaltenders coming through the national system and the Elite League system and those clubs. He's not the only goaltender that's British playing in the Elite League. I wouldn't be surprised as if time goes on, more British players do play out of the UK. Obviously, the Liam Kirk effect is still having an effect. More kids want to play the sport. Bracknell's now got 3 senior teams. So, and that's just from Bracknell point of view. I don't know about other teams. I know, Swindon and Telford and Peterborough have more than 1 senior team as well. So, the sport is definitely growing, and some clubs are actually growing faster than others at all levels. So, there is something to be said about the improvement of the national side. The national side, obviously, Great Britain are playing Canada in the build-up to the World Championships in a warm-up game. You couldn't write that script, could you? So, yes, the UK playing Canada in a warm-up game before the World Championships, I think in April. That's a big thing. And that will be televised. So, on a free-to-air channel. So, I don't know how much more big you can get. There is clearly a fan base in this country. I think the strangest jersey I've seen is a Mississauga Ice Dogs jersey. I've seen like OHL jerseys at UK rinks. I've seen Scandinavian teams at UK rinks. I did see parts of the Flames Oilers game. The Oilers look terrible. They've really hit a brick wall all of a sudden. They've gone from 1st to 4th, I believe 5th in the division, quite literally in the space of a week and a half. Something is not going right there, and they are too dependent on 2 or 3 players. Nugent Hopkins being the 2nd or 3rd line centre, he needs to be 3rd line. Draisaitl needs to be 2nd line, and McDavid the 1st line centre, plain and simple. That's not the case. While I do think, they're two or 3 of the best players in the league, and especially Draisaitl and McDavid are 2 of the best players in the league. You can't have 3 players carrying a team. Nugent Hopkins is the 2-way centre who will, grind away all day and put the shift in without getting the praise. Draisaitl and McDavid, they're the superstars, but too top heavy. And yeah, there's not a lot after that really. If one, as I said, when Nugent Hopkins went down, they lost a few games because they lost that second line centre. And if McDavid or Draisaitl get injured, then they really are up against it because then they've only got two top line centres. There's a problem. I do think there is issues there. Obviously, we've the roster freeze is over now because games have started again. I can see a fair bit of trade activity happening before the deadline. There are, I think, more trades to happen before deadline day. And I think deadline day will be more busy than people realise because Detroit are so bad. I think they could be in full rebuild mode, and I think they could get rid of some more players. I think Steve Yzerman has really taken on a real task that I don't think even he realised was as bad as it is. I don't think they're tanking. I think they're generally bad. Because the Devils could draft first overall, Ottawa could draft first overall, the San Jose Sharks, could draft first overall, which means a pick goes to Ottawa as well. So, yeah, there are problems for the Detroit Red Wings. There are other teams that are also in real bad straits right now who could get the first overall pick. So if they are tanking, it's a big risk to take because the draft lottery odds changed. So we'll see what happens. Do I think Ben Bowns will drop down to national? Not for a while yet. I don't think. I don't think Ben Bowns will drop down just yet. I really don't. I think the Cardiff Devils are one of the most dominant teams in the British system, the British leagues. He's their number one. He's the national team number one. I think he's still got a fair bit to give for now. He's got a fair bit to give for now. I don't see him wanting to take that step back just yet. He's been very lucky with not having any serious injuries. He's a very consistent goaltender. Plus, I don't think he's been pushed hard enough for that number one spot as the starting goaltender for the national side, or Cardiff for that matter. I don't think he's been pushed hard enough. So I think Cardiff and the national side need to find another goaltender who can push him for that position and make him work even harder. But I think, yeah, we may see him decide to take that step down a level when he's in his late 30s. I don't think we're close yet. He may retire altogether. He may get picked up by a European League. Yeah, we just don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. But for now, he's a Cardiff player, and we'll see what happens in the World Championships, and we can see if he can play as well as he did this past World Championships, and we'll see how he does. Deadline day in the NHL will be really interesting. I can see a lot of movement. I really can. I think Detroit, New Jersey, San Jose, there's a lot of movement from those teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. LA have been more competitive as of late since they've waived Kovalchuk, but you've got to look at the amount of players that have technically either been bought out or still partly on their books who are no longer playing for them. And they're an old side. They need to get some youth. So look for some trades to happen between some of the bottom feeders as well as some of those teams pushing for a Stanley Cup. Just look for trades. I think teams that won't necessarily trade for much would be the Capitals and the Blues. I think they're the most settled teams throughout the league. I think the Kings will be busy on the trade block, pieces out, pieces in. They want to get younger quicker, but they're not as bad as they could be. I think they've improved. They're a middle of the road team. If they stay 500, they will still be in the bottom 5-10 in the league. But I think they have. It's one of them. San Jose have really fallen off a cliff, and Anaheim as well. Anaheim have just plummeted. So the three California teams are in a real mess, and all three of them are actually slowly aging. And I think San Jose really hasn't worked out bringing Marlowe back. Pavelski moving on has affected them. Joe Thornton not scoring a goal now for over 50 games is starting to get worrying. He's not known as a goal scorer. He's more known as a creative player and a big physical creative player, great space. But he can score goals. And the fact he's gone over half a season without scoring is a problem. Greece qualified. I discussed this in a previous live stream. It's good. It's great to see for the game. It is great to see for the game. How competitive they're going to be is another thing. They're mostly made up of Australian second or third generation immigrants who I've got parents or grandparents who are Greek. Yeah, it's fine. Put the link to the documentary. in the chat is perfectly fine. And also at the end of the video, when I've done the live stream, you can whack it in the comment section as well. I'm more than happy for that to happen. I think it's great that we can have these discussions. Yes, Greece qualifying for the Rugby League World Cup is same as Jamaica. It's really good to see. Jamaica's mostly British, second or third generation players who've got parent or grandparent who are Jamaican. It's great for the game, but at the same time, we have to develop the sport in those locations as well. And this is the problem with rugby league. Rugby league is lacking finances massively, massively having money issues. The issue that we have with rugby league and rugby union to a certain extent is money. And a lot of teams are barely breaking even. A lot of teams are losing money. It's just their owners keeping them going. The NRL has money issues as well. And hence why the salary caps are a thing and exist. Salary caps exist for a reason. We've seen cap breaches be severely punished. We see it more in the NRL than in Super League, but Super League is starting to creep in. It's going to be interesting. It's also going to be interesting to see how the Toronto Wolfpack play in Super League and whether they actually do compete in the Challenge Cup this coming season. Because obviously last season with the Rugby Football League demanding the non-English teams pay £500,000 to enter the Challenge Cup didn't go down very well and actually damaged the image of the sport outside of the UK, Northern Heartlands. We'll see what happens. I've got a sneeze. I hate this cold chest infection. It's horrible. But yes, the Flames, the Calgary Flames, since Bill Peters' resignation, has the last month and a half has been really, really good. But we have noticed there is a culture issue within the NHL. And a lot of it's to do with what is and isn't acceptable for people to say or do to each other. The Bill Peters thing, I think there's a bit more to it than just Akeem Alou. I think there is a lot more to it. We haven't heard a lot more since he resigned. I don't think he coaches in the NHL again. And if any team in Europe picks him up and hires him, that's a bad image for the European leagues as well. More will come out, I'm sure. But the NHL has kept all this controversy under wraps. It's really hushed it down since the announcement of the Code of Conduct. But I did a video on Operation Slapshot, which is on the channel. And it's only one of 2 videos on YouTube. The other one is I Don't Give a Kachuk, which is a fellow subscriber and fellow YouTuber who did a video using my footage as part of the basis of and my research as part of his research, and I allowed him to do that. Oh dear. So, excuse me. So, Operation Slapshot. If you haven't seen it, I've got a video, and I couldn't give it to Chuck. Has got a video as well, which, again, as I say, he researched my video and my research. He looked through he watched my video through and through, looked at what I researched. He found his own bit of research as well. We're the only 2 YouTubers to discuss it. Other YouTubers haven't. It's really suppressed by the NHL. The NHL are very good at suppressing controversial things. So the Bill Peters controversy, the Mike Babcock, the Mark Crawford, it is sort of taking a back burner when it comes to being discussed by the mainstream media. It's sort of disappeared. Even though, the Dallas Stars, Dallas Eakins or whatever his name is, the Dallas Stars coach got replaced as well. Several coaches have fallen by the wayside because of controversy off the ice. And it's suddenly all gone very quiet about who does what. Free Sports, Premier Sports have the NHL rights here in the UK, although there are websites you can find as well if you can get the hold of certain websites that may or may not be legitimate. But Free Sports, Premier Sports, they have the rights for the TV in the UK. ESPN used to have the rights. ESPN no longer exists here in the UK. That is now, I think, split between Eurosport and BT Sport. They lost the rights years ago. The NRL is on Sky, the NBA is on Sky, NFL free to wear, and I believe Sky as well. So a lot of the overseas rights from the North American sports leagues are held by Sky or Free Sports or the free to wear channels, Premier Sports, things like that. It is interesting. They don't show every game in the NHL. They normally show the Canadian feeds, I've noticed, or the NBC feeds. they're the games that normally get shown. So I think there's some kind of agreement with Premier Sports, Free Sports, and the broadcasters in both the US and Canada about who gets to show what. It's normally Rogers Sports Net feed, Hockey Night in Canada, or NBC. They seem to be the ones that get most of the games shown over here in the UK when it comes to the NHL, which I find interesting. Although I think all broadcasters that broadcast NHL games do have games shown over here, but I believe Premier Sports and then their free channel Free Sports get to cherry pick which games they put on and host. There's a percentage, I believe. They'll have to work out somehow. But yeah, no, it's interesting that yes, there are TV deals. The amount of NHL jerseys I have seen, and with my job, I work outdoors. I see Boston Bruins fans. I work with a San Jose Sharks fan. I'm a Winnipeg Jets, and I like the Coyotes as my second team. I think when it comes to TV rights, media rights, we're seeing a lot of discussion about that at the moment, and a lot of rights are up for renewal next year, not 2020, 2021, and that's a real crucial year for a lot of sports, including the NHL and ice hockey, because of the possibility of a lockout and Seattle joining the NHL. A lot of TV rights, both domestically here in the UK and overseas, are up for discussion in 2021, 2022. That's a big period of time. And we know that Sky that we have here, which will be Fox in the US, is under a massive restructuring. And Comcast is now the owner of Sky. So there could be a massive restructuring of the TV deal that we have for sports in the UK. I don't know what the TV deals are going to happen with the NHL and other sports in North America. We know Major League Rugby is trying to find a mainstream broadcaster. We know Major League Soccer, they have a great TV deal over here in the UK. Great TV deal. But there we go. On the Bill Peters side of things, from what I know, it started with the Akeem Alou allegation of racist behaviour, basically. And then it went from there for his time at Carolina. So he was an affiliate coach at the Chicago Blackhawks, the AHL team there. He moved to Carolina. There's allegations of his time at Carolina. Nothing actually happened at Calgary that we know of. The way Calgary handled the situation was very, very professional. I think, the organisation was under a lot of pressure to get it right, considering that days before Mike Babcock had similar allegations of bullying players, basically like Mitch Marner and others when he was at Detroit. Although, ironically, his time at Anaheim, nothing's come up from there. But we have to be careful about how far back we go, how retrospective we make all this. But what's happened since Gary Bettman has come out and given his statement about what the NHL are going to do with the code of conduct, it's gone really quiet on the front of misbehaviour. We've seen the Dallas Stars coach, get fired as well for misconduct. We have nothing else apart from that to go on. So 3 coaches have lost their jobs surrounding a code of conduct kind of issue and misconduct kind of issue, or bullying, or whatever's happened. The issue that I think the NHL has, and a lot of sports have, is how they deal with not only coaches abusing their position, but players on player behaviour, and the culture around the dressing room, what happens away from the game. I think we are, as a society, we're becoming a little bit too sensitive to words. I think, that is a thing. I think not enough. I think kids in school are not taught to win anymore. They're taught to participate and be all friendly and hug and hold hands. That doesn't happen in the real world. You're going to have conflict in the real world. They're not taught conflict resolution. They're taught everyone participates and everyone's a winner. No, sometimes there are losers. So now no one knows how to lose an argument, and no one knows how to accept defeat. Yes, I didn't vote for the current government we have, but I'm not one of those who's protesting on Whitehall every weekend. I have to work. I also don't have the money to go to London to protest and whinge and whine. I think we have forgotten a lot of, sometimes you got to just, let people give the abuse and not pay attention to it. But I also think that, and also innocent until proven guilty. I think the Bill Peters resignation sums up that he pretty much was guilty. Mark Crawford, Brent Soap. I mean, Spitting Chicklets as a podcast has actually caused a few people to get suspended from their jobs, including Jeremy Roenick off NBC. Jeremy Roenick's comments, bit tongue in cheek. His co-presenter, she has said, "We're still friends. I'm not pissed at him, but he can't say that. He's a bit childish at times." She doesn't want him to get fired from NBC. But Spitting Chicklets, Brent Sopel, former player, again tongue in cheek. Mark Crawford gets investigated by the Chicago Blackhawks for, being a bit of a wally when he was a coach. Spitting Chicklets is really fun because you get to hear honesty from players and coaches and ex-players and coaches and fans and broadcast. You get honesty from the guests that are on that podcast. And this is something that we don't get in a lot of interviews with sports stars. It's so coached PR-wise. It's so antiseptic. Sometimes having a John Tortorella type character is really fun to have because he generally blows up. His latest interview where he said, "I'm not answering any questions," and he said "F off," and he just walked off away from the microphone stage bit, the podium. He's going to get a fine for that because he failed to answer media questions. I actually think he's highlighting an issue with officiating that has been simmering in the background for several seasons now. And because of a refereeing and officiating mistake, a player's got injured when the whistle should have been blown beforehand. He's now lost a player to injury, a key player, for 6 to 8 weeks because the officials did not blow the whistle when they should have and kill play. So he's rightly annoyed. And Columbus fans will be rightly annoyed. And I think hockey fans in general feel the same way that John Tortorella does, whether you like him or hate him. I don't know what else you can say about a state of officiating. We're having the same debate with VAR in European football and its implementation. Officiating is a big topic. We do have to be careful, but at the same time, we can't turn ourselves into, well, not saying snowflakes, but we can't bubble wrap people for their entire lives. You're going to have to hear things you don't like. You're going to have to come across things that are challenging. You're going to have some defeats along the way. And unfortunately, everyone's a bit too sensitive to things. Very sensitive to things. They can't take criticism when they're not good enough. A lot of players do pull the old race card. They do. But at the same time, the media going after certain players has been inappropriate. I also think there is an issue with racism in sport. At the same time, you can't blame, let's say a player from an ethnic minority isn't very good and gets dropped, pulls the race card. I find that cheap, and that doesn't help defeat racism or discrimination. But there are reasons why there aren't many black coaches in sport outside of American football and basketball. There's a reason for that. There's a reason why there's not many openly gay professional athletes in men's sport. There's a reason for that. But bringing in these tick box exercises saying you'll have inclusiveness or whatever it is, how you want to describe it, and the BMA, you've got to offer the Rooney rule. For me, is a tick box exercise to say, oh, look, we're doing something, when actually you're not. You're just pretending to do something to save a bit of PR. We're having it in football now in Europe. The bigger issue is when players or coaches and players abuse each other, they get suspended or thrown out the game. When fans openly not only abuse players verbally, but then throw missiles at them and then send them death threats on a daily basis, and no action is taken, that's why Black and Asian players don't want to become coaches when they retire. That's why openly gay players who may be openly gay to their teammates aren't openly gay in front of the media and say, look, I'm a gay football player. This is why. It's not the sticks and stones that are breaking their bones. It's actually the lack of action when it comes to players being abused by fans and fan misbehavior. It's actually having an effect. When Suarez and Terry were, done for it, they were investigated thoroughly. Suarez took a cop to ban for a period of time. But it is going to happen where we have another Eric Cantona incident or another Patrice Evra incident where a player lashes out against a fan. It very rarely happens on the pitch or on the ice or on the court. but it will happen again, where a player lashes out against a fan, not necessarily racist or homophobic, but it could be any kind of abuse. It could be just missile throwing. We could have another Jamie Carragher throwing the coin back in the crowd incident. It's going to happen again. The only way to get fans to behave is to refuse to play games, go on strike. The PFA is there for a reason. It is a trade union, technically, because clubs are their employers and they need a union. By law, you need to, if you are employed, you need to be given the option of joining a union. I want to go back to one of your previous comments about BT Sports being really lazy with some of their production. Premier Sports, Free Sports don't produce a lot of their programs. They do get the feeds from the US, Canada, or Europe, or wherever they're broadcasting from, but they're keeping their costs down. And they're actually, if you look at the subscription for Premier Sports, it's not that expensive. And Free Sports is a free-to-air channel that is accessible for all if you have a FreeSat or Freeview box, depending on your aerial. Some of the older FreeSat and Freeview boxes don't necessarily pick it up. It's only been a channel for 2.5 years. But it's generally, if you've got an HD box or HD TV, you can pick it up. So Premier Sports isn't expensive to subscribe to, and Free Sports is free to all in theory. On BT Sport, the production values are poor, and BT Sport is hemorrhaging money, and it's really. I've watched it. I've watched the Champions League and Europa League finals on YouTube, and there's always constantly problems with their feeds, even on YouTube, and the studio's tacky. And the fact that all they're presenting, apart from Jake Humphrey, are borrowed from other networks tells you all you need to know. They're either borrowed from ITV, BBC, Channel 4, Channel 5. They are borrowed from other networks. It is really poor. But hey, this is why my internet bill keeps going up. I'm an EE customer, that's part of the BT group, and my bill goes up in 17 months by 12 quid. I will be switching supplier, and I'll be making it very clear when I switch supplier the reason why. I'm not propping up your failing TV company. I'll also be changing my phone network as well, because I'm not having my phone bill and internet go up. I've been a loyal customer with EE for a long time. And my bill keeps going up and up and up. I don't get a loyalty discount. I don't get rewarded for being loyal. They try and offer me all these promotional things. I'll get this iPad, get this phone, get this video game. I don't want tacky free shit that I'm going to sell. What I want is to actually get rewarded with a reduced bill, please, and a better tariff, which you're not giving me. So that's my basic response to what's going to happen in 17 months when I change supplier, and they can suck it. But yes, when you give an internet company a TV rights, it doesn't end very well, because generally they're not very good at it. Who is this? My mate Damien's just messaged me. He's from Stoke, so he's a Stoke City fan. My thought on promotion nights. I don't really have one. I'm just a hockey fan, generally. I'm just an NHL fan. I love watching all 31 teams. There's some teams I love more than others, obviously. But there's some teams I really don't like. I like to see losing. But I just generally like watching. If there's two teams that I don't really like or dislike playing, I'm a happy neutral. But there are certain teams I have a soft spot for, other than the two teams that I actually actively support in the NHL. Promotion nights, though, we've seen this with like Monday Night Football in the NFL and Friday Night Football in the Premier League here in England and things like that, where they have a specific night of the week where they promote that one big game. And for me, changing start times of games to promote, plays havoc with fans. They're the ones who have to go to the arena, the stadium, the event, and get back again. And they're normally late at night. They normally have evening, nighttime start times. So getting back, some of these fans won't get home until silly o'clock the following day, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, if they've got to travel the length of a country or several hours by car or by plane. It's a very divisive topic, these promotion nights. A lot of it's done for the TV revenue, and a lot of fans aren't big fans of the Monday night games or the Friday night games. They would rather they weren't a thing. I'm not sure what it's like in North America with like Hockey Night in Canada on a Wednesday, for example, or on a Saturday when you've got that midweek game and the Saturday game, the Monday Night Football with the NFL. But I do know a lot of fans aren't particularly happy with that. In this country, at least, when it comes to our domestic sports having these, the big TV promotion, really. But when you have like promotions where if you turn up, you can get a half price jersey. Oh no, we have that. I think it does help. They do at my local ice hockey team that I follow, the Bracknell Bees. They do a school zone thing where school kids, local primary and secondary schools, get given free tickets or a number of discounted tickets to get more kids involved in the game. And it has actually paid off, because now we have 3 senior teams that play in the three tiers below the top tier in their respective divisions. The youth programs have expanded. There's now another girls' team being set up. There's another youth team being set up. So it has had the positive impact by increasing crowd numbers and also increasing participation. So some promotion nights do work. When it's a TV promotion where you actually move a certain fixture to a Monday night, to a Friday night, to a Wednesday night for TV, it annoys actual fans. But when you are actually actively engaging with your fan base by giving them some kind of incentive to come back a second time, win tickets, win a 50-50. Every hockey team that I know of has a 50-50 draw to try and entice fans to, keep coming, and also donate money towards the running of a team or the running of a charity. But on the side of looking at the TV promotions, when certain individual teams are playing on the Monday night, on the Friday night, on the Wednesday night, or on the non-traditional nights for games to be played in that league, or it's just for TV, fans don't like that. Fans that are going to the game don't like that. No, the NHL will not be coming to the UK with a regular team. They have played pre-season games here before. They have gone on played tours here before, and I've done a video on that as well, on the North American. The Major League Baseball coming over here to the UK beginning of the year to obviously play the Major League Baseball London series in the summer, and obviously next year as well. I did a look at it. The NHL were the first league to North American league to come here to play exhibition games. That was in 1938-39. That was before World War II. The Major League Baseball coming here in 2018, so 80 years later, shows how slow off the mark they've been compared to the NBA, the NFL, and the NHL in bringing regular and exhibition preseason games or exhibition games to expand the product. Shows how far behind Major League Baseball is in trying to grow their product outside of North America in Europe. The NHL were looking at one point, there was an idea on the table about a decade or 2 decades ago about having a European division or a European conference to develop European players. That didn't work. Never seriously considered, but it was on the table. Yes, the Dallas Cowboys are one of the biggest sports franchises in all sports and are one of the most recognized sports names. Very well known. Even if you don't follow the NFL, a lot of people know who the Dallas Cowboys are. Ireland cancelling 2 test matches. That is a concern, considering they've just got test status and they've played pretty well in the test matches they've played in so far. That is a worry. But at the same time, the fact they've made test status is a positive for cricket. But cricket has issues, and the 100 format is not going down well with cricket fans. The way they're PRing it suddenly on Facebook, it's disappeared. Before Christmas, they were really driving the 100, get your tickets, get interested. Most 90% of the people responding are, we don't want this. I won't be watching it. And if cricket is trying to grow its fan base and attract new fans, they're pissing off their existing fan base. But about 90% of the existing fans have gone not interested. So if you want to grow the fan base, best not piss off the existing fan base that's already declining. Because there's something I've noticed. The viewership figures for the Cricket World Cup final were at about 9.5 million at peak viewing on free-to-air TV, including Sky. So Sky got a percentage of that, but most people watch on free-to-air TV. Peak viewing. The Ashes in 2005, England, Australia, domestically here in the UK. I do not know about Australia. I cannot comment on the Australian viewership figures for percentage of viewers. But 1/3 of the nation at one point, that's about 24 million people, watched the Ashes in 2005 on one day at Trent Bridge, the Trent Bridge test. The average viewership was about 15 million per day. So there's been a drop of average and peak viewership. Peak viewership, there's been a drop of, I think, gotta get this right. 16 million, that's a 9, 19, 10, 13 million to 14 million peak viewership drop, and roughly about 6 million average viewership drop in cricket viewership for live free-to-air TV in 15 years. So even though the numbers were good, you've still lost an average of 6 million TV viewers alone. That's not including going to games. 6 million. People are switching off. So to come up with a new gimmicky format, which no one wants, and targeting at housewives and kids. So you make the game more complicated and you're sexist in your PR. Well done. Well done, ECB. Well done. Because this sounds like it's been made up by a TV executive on the back of a cigarette packet after he's had about 12 drinks down down the back of a strip club in Soho after doing a large amount of drugs. Sounds like a gimmick that's been come up on a lad's night out on the back of a Benson Hedges packet. Because you've made the game more complicated. Yes, you've shortened it, but you made it more complicated. What's wrong with T10? Halving T20 and make it, okay, let's make it 10 overs of super fast pace, sod the power play, just make it super fast paced. Bang. T20 is a great format. I love it. 1 day, great format. Love it. The 4-day first class, I actually love it. And test matches, yeah, I can sit through a 5-day test match. And back in the day, test matches used to be 6 days and used to have 6 test match series rather than 5 at your maximum. So you have to look at why it is that peak viewership is down from the Ashes 2005 and average viewership is down on 2005. Do you know why? It's not been on free-to-air TV. There's your plain simple answer. Put domestic cricket or T20 cricket, whatever cricket you want, on free-to-air TV, people will watch it. Put domestic international matches on free-to-air TV, guess what? People will watch it. People will watch. It's proven. Stick it behind a paywall, people don't want to watch. The highest viewership Sky have got for cricket since they've had sole rights is 2.25 million for one of the Ashes tests this year. That's 23 million lower than when it was on Channel 4 free-to-air in 2005. The ECB chased the money, took the fans for a ride, and have lost. Oh no, you don't have to make cricket like darts. You just have to make it accessible, and it's not accessible. So this new format is crap. Oh yeah, you get some games on free-to-air TV. No one wants to watch it. So when the viewership figures are really shit, and the crowd numbers are really shocking, and the existing fan base has already gone, we ain't going to watch cricket no more. Stop doing this. And the ECB are pushing ahead with it. And the only people coming out in favour of it are centrally contracted players. Players are not allowed to speak their mind about this. And you've got to look at the sponsors. They're not healthy sponsors. They're junk food sponsors. The uniforms just look like a pack of crisps or chips if you're North American or Australian. They are fast food, the KP crisps. They make fast food. They make fast food snacks. That's the title sponsor. Well done, ECB. You've really screwed this up so utterly. But I've noticed on Facebook the 100 format has disappeared off my newsfeed. It doesn't come out on the advertising when the ads come up with the sponsored ads. It's disappeared. Same on Twitter. It's just gone away. In the run up to Christmas, massive promotion on Facebook and Twitter. Post Christmas, nothing. Nothing for about a week now. Just gone away. I think that. I think. And NatWest, a bank that's owned by the taxpayer. So at some point we are paying for this. Great. I do like 2020. I like all the existing formats. I do not like this idea. It overcomplicates the game. And the way they're trying to target, housewives and kids, they're assuming that every stay-at-home parent is a female and that every single parent is a female, which is BS because I was brought up by my mum, but my dad was also a single parent as well, technically, for a period of time. So that's a real assumption there. And again, in the modern day and age, where people are like, did you assume that I'm a single parent? Did you assume I'm a female parent? You're going to piss a lot of people off. And the existing fan base, as I say, the comments that I've seen online are wholly negative. 95% negative. So if you're going to want to attract new fans, make the sport, as it already is with the formats that already exist, more accessible. They will watch. They will want to go down. The theory behind it is you've got to have a parent who's interested. My dad wasn't really interested in cricket. I love it. Love the sport. My dad wasn't really interested. I loved it from day one. I'm the only member of my family to really religiously like cricket. No one else in my family really likes it. Alive or dead. Ever liked it. My dad doesn't really like it. Never really liked it. My granddad's one of them will watch in passing. He will, tune in because one of his best mates is a member of Lords. And yes, I have been to games. The only other person in my family who likes cricket religiously is my stepdad, and we don't even get on. So their assumption is to be into cricket, you have to have a relative who's older who's into cricket. I didn't have that. So that assumption is already flawed. Then they say the money's been good for the game. That's why they keep coming up with all these new formats, because the money's really helped the game. That's why county cricket's on its knees and the players are getting greedy. Sounding a lot like football, isn't it? A lot like football. The big contracted players making lots of money. Some clubs struggling and really struggling. Crowd numbers not great at lower levels. Participation at lower levels falling because the money's really great for the game. We're seeing a lot of parallels with rugby league, rugby union, football here, aren't we, lads and ladies? It's really striking. Oh, yeah. 2020 has been played for fun at schools for years. I've played 10 and 20 over cricket long before 2020 was an actual format at senior level. I played it at school. Oh, yeah, you're talking about Ben Stokes. Yeah, he's got an MBE or something and made Sports Personality of the Year for throttling his wife in public because that's a playful thing, and battering a guy's head in so he shattered his eye socket and broke his own hand and missed a whole test series because he was just waiting trial. And he got away with it because they charged him with the wrong thing because the British legal system is really great that way. Yeah, no, I don't like Ben Stokes because he's a Kiwi anyway. He's a thug. He's a homophobe. He's a racist, and he also insults the disabled while he's at it, who are also of an ethnic background. Katie Price is Jordan's son, Harvey. He's mixed race. So not only was he racist towards him, he also insulted him because he's disabled, and he got away with that. It's a thing. Yeah, Ben Stokes playfully throttling his wife. Didn't Charles Saatchi and Nigella Lawson do that and get divorced like about 2 weeks later? Just putting it out there. I'm not a fan of Ben Stokes. Never have been. Alex Hales, cocaine. Anyone? The sport has an issue with partying. Always has done. Players seem to get away with it. We're seeing parallels with the 80s with both of them. 90s with Tuffers, with the weed. Come on, people. The drink culture, Flintoff, it hasn't evolved. It hasn't changed. It's still there. The fact that they were on international duty and breached curfew and got arrested tells you something about the character of these men. They cannot behave. He's doing the big bash because he's lost his centralised contract here in the UK from the ECB because of his antics. Alex Hales got away without being charged after that incident, but then this summer was thrown out of the England squad because of his drug use. So he goes to Australia. It's mad. Absolutely bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. And I think Alex Hales is wasting his career. I really do. Ben Stokes, while he is a very talented player, he's injury prone. He's a thug. And the PR is, but no, he's redeemed himself. Great. Domestic violence really redeems itself because Jeffrey Boycott. I mean, him getting a knighthood or being listed in the knighthood honours of Theresa May didn't go down well with some feminist nutcase groups. But Boycott being Boycott, I don't like him anyway because I think he's just an anachronism of sexism and domestic violence and normalising it. But that's another thing. I do think the fact that Australian and Kiwi players have come out against 4-day tests, I think it's a good idea, possibly. I like the day-night format. I think that has to be pushed forward. If you are to make test cricket better for TV, what's the best time of day? Primetime viewing. Morning sessions are crap. No one's in the stands. The players are half-arsed because it's like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. And to be fair, they've probably been out on a jolly the night before because this is cricket and there's still a drink problem within the sport and a drug problem. So, yeah, morning sessions are always terrible, even for fans. I think the best time is a day-night test. Primetime TV viewership, so more kids coming from school, people coming from work, and more people going to the ground. The evening session is the best session for cricket because the stands are normally pretty full. I think day-night tests are the way to go. If you want to keep them 5-day, fine. But I think if there is a rain delay or a day lost to play, then they should still make it a 5-day test and carry that next day on, to have a carry on rather than lose a whole day's play, extend the test match. I think the mascot runs and 2020. I mean, when the IPL was on free to air TV, it was brilliant to watch about a decade ago. I used to love watching it on the telly a decade ago when it was on ITV in this country. They took that away from us. They sold that BT Sport. Yay, well done. Well done. BT Sport and Sky Sports are killing cricket. Because when it was shared rights, the TV viewership was at its highest. Now it's I like the fact that the Australian way of doing things with the NRL, the AFL, cricket, the A League, they even show the NFL, ice hockey, all sorts, the NHL. They have shared rights between the free to air and subscription channels. And when you get a sports subscription, the NRL on Fox is ad free, which is something we don't get here. You get a pay for, the TV subscription for Sky or BT. You're getting laced with ads. My friend is a Sky customer. You would expect you have paid for a Sky TV subscription that some of the Sky channels would be ad free. No, they're not. Then when you got Sky Sports, you still got to pay for the pay per views. Oh, I'm sorry, you've already paid a fortune to get the Sky Sports package. Why on earth would I pay more for boxing or MMA? Not happening. That's why people illegally stream. The Hearn family, Eddie and Barry, bastards. Not a big fan of them. They're after. There's so many pay-per-views now. It's actually ruined what was a special event. Like once or twice a year, you would actually, beg your mum or your dad to go. Can we just have the pay-per-view? Can we have it unlocked, please? Now it's a monthly thing, and no one's willing to pay anymore. They've overdone it, and the pay-per-view model is so flawed, especially when you've got a free-to-air channel that also has a box office pay-per-view. I'm sorry, if you're a free-to-air channel and all your other channels are free-to-air, why the hell would I want a pay-per-view? You're a free-to-air network. You should stay free-to-air. I think I don't know enough about Alison Mitchell to pass comment. I'm liking the fact that some of the female presenters in a variety of sports, be it in North America with the ice hockey and the NFL and Major League Rugby, are actually really intelligent and know what they're talking about. Watching all of Major League Rugby this past season, this past springtime, the female touchline reporters and commentators were really, really knowledgeable. They really, and for a minority sport, it isn't, and a minority sport it is in the US and Canada, not a mainstream sport. They were really knowledgeable. CBS did a great job with the broadcast. They were the main broadcaster. I have to admit, the female touchline and up in the commentary box, they did a very, very good job and have to be commended. I'm actually, when a female gets a job in a men's sports broadcast, I don't mind that. I really don't. What I do mind is when they're not capable of doing the job. And it's the same for male broadcasters as well. There's plenty of male commentators and broadcasters, Jake Humphrey, who are not good enough for the job they're doing in BT Sport. And I'm critical of them as well. Gender has nothing to do with it. It's ability for me. I am gender blind. I'm colorblind. I don't care if the presenter or the broadcaster or the commentator or the touchline reporter is black, white, male, female, transgender. I really don't care as long as they're capable of doing the job. I have heard that there was an NFL sideline report. It was unfortunately lost in a plane crash. It happens. It's life. Every day, average Joes like you and me, we die all the time. No one gives a toss. Oh, it's a celebrity. We have to care. We touched so many people's lives. No, she was just a journalist. She didn't touch that many lives. The only people who touched themselves were those blokes who were fapping one out because she's an attractive female presenter. That's a bit harsh, but when TV personalities die in the same way that average Joes and average Jane Does die, I think the people, the social media thing, when they really go OTT about, this person was so important in my life. No, they weren't. They just present your favourite sports program, or they were your favourite actress in your favourite TV program. They weren't actually a major part of your life. They weren't your best mate. Get a grip. That's my view on that. I think social media has made a lot of people more mentally ill, and there has been studies proven that social media is not necessarily a good thing. How am I doing? Well, the flat has become a disaster. It's become a health hazard. It's got leaks everywhere. My neighbour downstairs, we share the same landlord and the same letting agency. We are taking them. There's legal stuff going on. Leaks. Black mold, damaged walls, all sorts of problems. The last 2.5, 3 months have not been great, but we're getting there, and the channel is still succeeding and has grown to its biggest extent. We've now passed 680, I think. We're on the way to 700, and hopefully by the end of January, we might hit 1,000 and get reviewed for financial compensation with adverts. Why is amateur sports in the UK like the USA? There is a university system, and there are amateur leagues. I think it's the way that the franchise system in the US and Canada works compared to the club system in Europe. You've got the amateur clubs, and then you have the semi-pro and pro levels. There's a pyramid, whereas obviously Coca-Cola, because if it was sponsored by the other substance, I might not be doing this as well. Yes, we are getting environmental health to come sort it out, and there's lots going on outside the channel, which has meant not a lot of videos the last couple of weeks, and health has been a part of that. I've been fighting this chest infection for a week, and it's pissing me off. And I've been going to work as a bin man every day whilst not being well. I've had Christmas Day, Boxing Day off, ill, but I had them off anyway, and I've got tomorrow off and I'm ill. So all my holiday days, I'm ill. And then I've got to take some holiday before the end of February, and I'm not well. And I've got to deal with legal stuff and bad landlord and bad letting agent. I've got to be very careful what I say, because you never know. They might be a fan of my channel. I've never met my landlord, but he could actually be a sports fan. I'll be very careful what I say. But I've had a lot of issues with the flat, and it's not been plain sailing. Health issues since nearly day one. But we're getting there, and that's another issue, and we'll discuss that when we get to it. Yes, but this stuff is like rocket fuel for me. It's keeping me going. I've got a Rustler's burger in the fridge. I've got there's a pot noodle now. Do the pasta dishes where you can actually like have your pot pasta. So I've got my pot noodle pot pasta carbonara, which is actually really nice. It's actually not actually that bad. It's got some chopped chives, creamy cheesy eggy. It's actually quite nice. It's pretty much like macaroni and cheese with chives in it and a bit of bacon. It's really nice. It's really creamy as well. It's actually quite nice. For £1.39, I'm not complaining. But yeah, no, I have to admit, the amateur side of sports, and I will get back to this, is the franchise system and the draft system you have in the US and Canada compared to the club system that you have over here in Europe, and obviously in Australia and New Zealand. There's also a club system when you go up through the levels as well. Yes, Fanta actually is the German version of Coca-Cola. It was made under license in Germany in the 30s. And so it was already owned by Coca-Cola, but it was made under license for various reasons due to 1939 and September the 1st and the naval blockade of Germany, and some other political and military goings on. America didn't actually join the World War II until 1941. But you had a sort of a trade embargo. So there was a Ford factory and a GM factory in Germany that were taken over by Opel. Opel, yes, what we call Vauxhall here in the UK and Holden in Australia, and GM in North America, and Saab in Sweden. Opel is the German version. But we'll get to that. But yes, Fanta originally was the German version of Coca-Cola, made by Coca-Cola, and Fanta flavors are different to Coca-Cola, so it diverges after that. What do I think is better, the club system or draft system? Well, obviously the North Americans are used to a draft system, but I think the club system actually does work better because the clubs can control the development of the player from youth level through to the senior squad. That's my personal viewership on it. The draft system, you can draft a player, but he will still play for his junior team or a team in another country for 2-3 years before that organisation really gets their hands on the player and gets to see how he's developed, injuries, so on, so on, and so on. No. Fanta was invented after the Royal Navy blockade in 1939. It already existed pre-1939, but it took its diversionary path because they kept it as Fanta. They couldn't call it Coca-Cola. Even though it was made under license by Coca-Cola and actually was owned by Coca-Cola, it was the German brand of it And it originally kind of wasn't black; it was actually green, and Fanta wasn't always orange or fluorescent orange or green. It was also a different color. Um, the draft does draw TV ratings, but at the same time, how many of these draft picks don't make it to the NHL? Whereas a club develops a player through their youth system, he plays through the youth system, he makes it to the first team. He might not be a first team regular, but he actually gets to that top league or the senior team at whatever club and whatever division they're playing in. He may get scouted by a bigger club. He might go down a division, but still be a professional. How many draft picks don't make it for after the draft table? I prefer the club system in the sense that the club can control the development of the player. If they want to loan him out to another club to continue his development, they're still involved with the process. Whereas the draft system, you send him to an affiliate, or you send him back to juniors, or you keep him in an overseas league, and you're relying on your scouts and reports from the other team and communication. I don't think it necessarily evens the league out. The salary cap does that as well. The salary cap does that more. I think you'll find a salary cap does that more than a draft system. But it's the way that the collegiate system in the US works. There is no like NFL second tier affiliate league, whereas Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, the NHL, the NBA all have affiliate leagues and leagues below, and other professional leagues around the world where you can send players. The NFL doesn't have that; it's draft or bust. Yes, Liam Kirk is doing okay. Follow him on Twitter. Follow the Peter Repeats on Twitter. They have Liam Kirk watch. Follow me on Twitter. It's far easier than following on YouTube. Plenty of YouTubers are discussing Liam Kirk. Liam Kirk is doing very, very well. He's developing very, very well. I wouldn't be surprised if the Coyotes move him into the ECHL, AHL affiliates like the Tucson Roadrunners at some point and continue his development. Yes, I mentioned earlier China. The Chinese Super League has imposed a brand new salary cap for the new year at £45,000 per week in our money. In UK money, I think it's about $54,000 US. Players like Oscar, for example, and Hulk are on over 400,000 a week. Their contracts are in breach of salary cap. So there are at least 20 or 30 players who their contracts breach salary cap. They will have to either take massive pay reductions, which they're not willing to do, or find new employers. I think if you want to look at why they've put in a salary cap, God knows. But here's the thing: the Chinese Super League is losing money, and the amount of match fixing in Chinese football has been a thing. Look at the crowds, look at the attendances; they're not as good as you think. The Chinese league, the clubs, they pump crowd noise in to make it seem like it's more full, and they tactically position cameras so you can't see the empty seats. It's a thing. It's a well-known fact that the Asian football leagues in Korea, Japan, China, Vietnam, all the Southeast and that part of Asia, massive corruption in football. It's a big thing. And crowd numbers are next to nil in some games. But yeah, salary cap has to be brought in because fans aren't going to games and the clubs aren't making any money and they're paying these exorbitant wages on players. On the Liam Kirk thing, yes, he's now the assistant captain. He is really racking up the points. He's a great two-way forward. I think he will go to the ECHL first because he's already said the ECHL is equivalent to the Elite League. AHL at a push, that's the equivalent of a top Elite League side, is the bottom feed of the AHL. So he's already basically played at a decent level before he was drafted. He's now getting regular appearances. He's a two-way forward. He's getting some good points. He's consistently chipping away. He's getting more points per game than he was before. And as we've seen when he was developing as a younger player, as a teenager, as a 15, 16-year-old when he played with the Steel Dogs and the Steelers, given game time and given a role, he will chip away. He will get points. He'll get assists. He'll get goals. He will be a good secondary scorer. He's a two-way forward. He'll be primarily used on a forecheck shutdown line, probably third or fourth liner at the higher levels. He played that kind of role at the World Championships. He was third, fourth line for GB in that forechecking shutdown role. He has got very good hands. He can score. He can put up assists. He can be that guy. He's very clean. He doesn't take a lot of penalties. His penalty minutes are very, very low. He's a very, very disciplined player as well. So he's very disciplined on that forecheck and that tracking back. He doesn't give away silly penalties. He's got good skate speed. Good leg speed. He can, he's got good speed as well, which is vital. And he's a decent size. He's not a tiny lad. He's not the biggest, but he's a decent size. And he's got a decent motor on him. He's got a good engine on him. I think, he will get appearances at the NHL level at some point. AHL, I think, is more his regular bread and butter, but I can see him, if he continues to develop at this pace, because he went later in the draft than expected. He was expected to go in the fourth round, fourth round. He went in the seventh, and late in the seventh. He's a steal. And I'm going to mention one other very, very talented forward, Pavel Datsyuk. There you go. He went in the seventh round. He is definitely, for me, a future Hall of Famer in my eyes. He may not make the Hall of Fame, but for me, he's a future Hall of Famer. His skill level and his puck control and his stick control and his vision as a two-way forward. You have to see his highlight reel, his shootouts. On the shootout on a penalty shot, the things he can do one-on-one with a goaltender, he will bamboozle many a goaltender. He's proven that with his shootout and penalty shot highlight reel, and also his play reel. He can go through 4 or 5 players. He may not be the most skillful player, he may not be the greatest player, but Pavel Datsyuk is a late 7th round draft pick that has panned out. Do I play Madden? I used to. I don't really enjoy playing it anymore. I haven't played it for about 4 or 5 years. I owned a couple of Madden games. Not a big fan of it. I don't play any more EA Sports games. I used to play FIFA a lot. I don't play that anymore. I've really gone off the whole EA Sports. I played UFC 2. Sort of didn't mind that. Fight Night, I've played a couple of them. Passable. But for me, I'm not a big fan of sports games anymore. I prefer things like this. I will be doing a review of that when I actually finish the storyline mode, which I haven't really bothered with since I've got about 3 missions left and I haven't really bothered with it. I'm more into that type of game than what other games I'm into. I've got a few games floating around, but they're all sort of under piles of crap. But I'm not really into sports games. And we've discussed this before on the channel. It has been mentioned that I should talk about esports. I've got to do a lot of research into esports and how much esports is worth as an industry. And, should it get mainstream media attention rather than just on YouTube and Twitch? Should actually the mainstream media, free-to-air and subscription channels really give it more airtime and more discussion because it's worth quite a bit of money. And professional esporters can make a very decent living. Even if you're an average esporter, you can make a pretty decent living. So it's interesting to know that esports and should we really discuss esports as well? That's something to bear in mind and to look at. And I've been meaning to do a video on that for quite some time. I've got to do a fair bit of research though. And to be fair, with the state of my flat, do I get the whiteboard out and brave the whiteboard and the laptop stand and get the pens out and start discussing esports and do a big, fair bit of research? Because it's something I'm tempted to look at. Discussing video games and sports video games, I am tempted to look at it. Several sports leagues have got involved with video games and sports teams have, got involved in, and that's how they reach out to their fan base. We've seen that a lot with Fortnite and the NFL. We've seen it with FIFA and football. FIFA 19 and FIFA 20 and football players actually being involved and football clubs being involved and reaching out to their fans that way. So it's interesting. I think over in the UK, I don't think it's got as much airtime as it should have. But at the same time, I think it's a matter of time before a mainstream broadcast, a bit free-to-air or subscription TV, gives it a bit more notice and a bit more coverage and discussion, whether it's by a documentary or actually broadcasting events. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I wouldn't say Twitch TV is mainstream media. That's social media is Twitch. And while I have seen Twitch TV on Xbox, you can get it on Xbox Live and PlayStation online and on PC and things like that. It's not technically a TV channel as in your mainstream media. It's like YouTube, it's like Twitter, it's social media. And this is the thing. Twitch is designed for gamers anyway. It's not pushing their comfort zone. You're not pushing their boundaries. That's what Twitch is designed for, is game streaming. What I'm discussing is a major national carrier other than ESPN over here in the UK going, we're going to broadcast an esports tournament. That is when you start getting recognition for an event. This is how sports get recognition, is when a mainstream media outlet, be it online or on the telly, actually signs an agreement saying we'll pay you X, we'll pay your league X amount of millions a year for 5 years if we get sole or preferential broadcast rights. That's how a sport grows. That's how interest grows. But we have seen with the rise of social media, some sports are reaching out to YouTube and Twitch to broadcast and TikTok to broadcast their media rights. So Major League Baseball have a YouTube channel. NASCAR has a YouTube channel. Major League Rugby has a YouTube channel. The NRL has highlights. The NHL has highlights on YouTube channels. So major sports leagues are doing this now, where they're using social media to reach a wider audience. But we'll see. I think esports on mainstream media would be interesting. It's a very interesting concept that I'm really interested in seeing how that develops. Really, I truly am. Truly am interested in seeing how that would develop. Absolutely. That looks a lot of fun. And I can definitely research the history of esports, the major esports leagues and tournaments. And I'm definitely, yeah. But Murdoch no longer controls Sky here in the UK. It's Comcast. So Murdoch's media empire isn't what it was. It's not what it was. Comcast owns the UK arm of Sky now, and Fox. I believe Disney are involved in buying bits. Fox has to be separated from News Corp. So it's interesting. His media empire is not as big as what it was 10 years ago. Let's just say that. It has shrunk back a bit. Several newspapers are shut down. Others have had to rebrand themselves. He's lost some of his TV networks and full control. He tried to gain full control of Sky B, which is his British media business. He also was a massive Labour Party supporter as well for about 20 years. So he supported the two main parties for a lengthy spell because of their policies that were also beneficial to his companies. Bear that in mind. The reason why he supported not only Tony Blair and David Cameron was the business policies of their manifestos were beneficial to his media companies. That's why. And to a certain extent, he's also supported John Major and Margaret Thatcher. So he supported both major parties and Gordon Brown. He supported all the prime ministers from 1979 through to 2016. He has supported those prime ministers. It sort of went a bit wobbly towards the end of the Cameron era with the Levinson inquiry and how Sky B and News International, so News Corp's British companies, behaved in relation to a whole variety of issues. But I would say this. His media empire is shrinking daily. It is. It's not what it was, but I would still never get a Sky subscription. I still do not read any Murdoch publications. I used to, partly because I was a media student, but partly I used to because they were also the cheapest publications on the newspaper rack and the magazine rack. They were actually the cheapest, ironically. Not necessarily the case now, but they were the cheapest. And when you're like a teenager who wants to buy a sports mag and it's Murdoch printed, I'm sorry, but if it's the cheapest one compared to MCN when it comes to sport, MCN had a motorcycle. MC had MCN Sport and MCN News. Now, MCN Sport, which was the magazine, which had the monthly magazine, went out of print, doesn't exist anymore, but MCN still goes. Unfortunately, when you've got, I forget what sports magazines he had a fair few, actually. Gary Neville, I heard about Gary Neville's comments about the two main parties with their races. I don't know enough about David Jones and what's actually been said. I know Gary Neville's been quite outspoken about a lot of things, and a lot of the time I think he's a moron. But when it comes to racism in football, he's spot on. Spot on. It's all over Facebook. It's all over Twitter what he said, saying the two main parties have tolerated racism within their own party ranks and gone very left and right wing. The left wing are also known to be anti-Semitic as well as the right. Gary Neville's spot on. If the two biggest political parties in this country have tolerated racism within their organisations, what would you expect any different on the football terraces? Gary Neville's right. I don't know enough about David Jones to really pass comment on what he said. I haven't read into that, but I do actually support Gary Neville in what he said after the Chelsea-Tottenham game. I wholeheartedly, in this case, for once, agree with Gary Neville. And I'm not a Gary Neville fan. Never was a fan of his as a player or as a pundit. But in this instance, he is right. When socially, two major political parties are tolerating racist behaviour from party members and activists and supporters, then what do you expect? Because sport is a symptom of the society that the sport is played in. And we are seeing racism in other sports. It's not just football. And I don't think all football fans are idiots. There are some very, very educated football fans out there. But unfortunately, a significant minority do tarnish the majority. And unfortunately, a lot of the majority don't do anything. They sit by idly and allow it to happen. And this is why I bring back to the PFA and the players going on strike. If you piss off the main fans, who are loyal and not racist and not homophobic, action will happen. They will start sounding out the racists and the homophobes and those who are just generally abusing football players. I mean, it's a bit more than just pointing out color, abusing a player for the color of his skin or his sexuality. We're having death threats sent to players for, oh God, he scored an own goal. Let's send him death threats. This is stupid. When football managers are getting bullets sent in the posts from due to sectarianism in Scotland and death threats saying, we're going to blow up your house, we're going to murder your wife. There's passion, and then there's overstepping a mark. Oh, look, it's not just English fans. Scotland fans abroad are chaos as well. Irish aren't much better. The Welsh aren't much better. General. But you think it's just English or British fans. You haven't seen the rest of Europe. Honestly, if you've got to see the Dutch, they are vile. The French are pretty bad. The Italians are terrible. The Turks don't even go there. The Germans, the Poles, the Russians, all of them. It's not just a British disease. It's European and South American fans overseas are absolute animals. All of them. All of them. Every fan base has that hooligan element, and it's worse in Europe and South America, and Britain included, than other parts of the world. The element of vile, feral gang activity has been there since the 50s. It's not just the British disease anymore. We're very good at it, and we exported it very, very well in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We invent stuff and sell it abroad. That's what Britain's about, is being entrepreneurial. The Europeans have taken it and gone, we like this product of violence, we'll make it better. We'll be more organised. And I tell you now, because the British media go for it, Murdoch still controls a lot of media in Europe. He knows it sells. He knows fear, mainstream people's fear of the football violence on a Saturday sells. The middle classes and the elderly are the ones that are more right-leaning. Murdoch is very right-wing. He knows that spinning story about all football fans are hooligans, they're all thugs, it sells. So you look at he controls a lot of Sky in Europe as well, and Fox in Europe. That he also controls a lot of newspapers in Europe. It's not just a British thing. It is actually, you look at Europe, he does control a fair proportion of the media. Football violence makes him money. The TV rights makes him money. Spreading fear in the voting populace, who are mostly middle class and mostly over the age of 45, and more right-leaning in their views, right of centre, makes him money. Fans across Europe fear Saturdays. Families fear Saturdays. The elderly fear a Saturday. You will see shops shut up shop for about 4 or 5 hours. On a Champions League or Europa League night or a Saturday game, they will just go, no, we're not opening today. Nah, we're gonna shut for a few hours. Not because they're watching the game at the stadium or on the telly. They're terrified their shop's going to get smashed up. You will see people who live in the city centre shut their windows and shut their doors. I've seen it. It's a thing. It's not just a thing on a lads, the lads on tour on an away day, let's say in Carlisle, playing away in, I don't know, Plymouth. Oh, let's go down the south coast and bash up the Southerners, or let's go beat those Northern Monkeys. It's a bit more than just the lower leagues. It's a Europe-wide problem. It's a South America-wide problem. People die on match day weekends regularly. It's more than just a bit of throwing bananas at black players and calling a player a puff. This is a thing. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. The worst case scenario. The reason why it's been so played upon is again Murdoch. He plays upon people's fears. Fear sells media. I think what we've seen is a rise in hooligan activity across Europe and South America, mostly in Europe, and it's not just a British thing. It really isn't. Greek, Turk, Dutch, German, Eastern Europe, Italy, Spain, France, they're all as bad as each other. Some more so. You have to see the footage online on YouTube of the European hooligan ultras. Go for it. It makes some of the English and Scottish thugs who are about 15, 20 lads who are a bit pissed up having a fight look like child's playing the playground. You got to see some of the fans in Bulgaria after their team wins a quarter final in the Bulgarian Cup. They basically set the stadium on fire with fireworks. The Bulgarian FA can politely say, "Can you please stop doing that?" Oh, you're the biggest club in Bulgaria. We won't fine you, but just please don't do it again. So they win the semi-final and did exactly the same thing. No sanctions. This is what happens. And the media don't help with their reporting. And a lot of it is the Murdoch media doesn't help with going after Raheem Sterling, for example, and having such an obsession with Raheem Sterling last summer was just painful. Raheem Sterling is a controversial figure. I think he's overrated as a player, but I don't think he deserves the attention that he gets for the colour of his skin. And he's mixed race as well. But I'm not a big fan of Raheem Sterling. That's because of his playing style, not because of the colour of his skin. Some of these ultra gangs are linked to paramilitary groups that fought in the Balkans, and and British hooligans as well, linked to terrorist organisations such as the far right and far left, and the paramilitaries in Ireland as well. It's a thing. You look at Eastern Europe. A lot of them have links to the military and police forces, and a lot of the issues in Chechnya and the Balkans. A lot of mercenaries, they have links to organised crime. Same as over here. Football hooliganism makes money. It's also a training ground for thugs to go on into other forms of crime. It is. And yeah, some of these ultras have stakes in their clubs. Some of them do actually have a say in how their clubs are run, and who's appointed manager and who's appointed chairman, and what players get signed. They generally and it's the same in South America as well. I think is it River Plate? Their hooligan movement actually own the club partly because they're all club members, and they never get banned because if they ban all their club membership, the club goes bankrupt. That's how scary it is that some of these hooligan organisations are legitimised by the fact that they have membership of the clubs they allegedly are fans of, but also they will kill the opposition's fans just for fun. It's a thing. I've seen the ultras of Italy and Germany. It's fun when you're on their side. It's not fun when you're not on their side. And there's a big right-wing element, and to a certain extent in some of the clubs, left-wing element. So if you are a fan of St. Pauli or Livorno, you're very left-wing to the fact of almost Marxist and very anti-Semitic. And if you're a fan of Lazio, for example, very right-wing, fascist. So yeah, there is a political element to it as well. There's an ethnic element to certain countries' hooligan problem, especially in South America and in the New World, such as the US have got it now as well. It's just not on the same level, but there is an ethnic element in certain neighbourhoods having a high proportion of overseas-born nationals living there. There is an ethnic element. Oh yeah, no, it did happen. The Eternal City derby was cancelled between Lazio and Roma because there were threats to kill a player. Absolutely. Roma itself is more royalist, and Lazio's fascist. So the Roma fans would like to see the monarchy back, and they're right wing, but a different type of right wing and a different type of nationalism, which is not as racist, but it's still bad. The Lazio fans have links to the old fascist party, and the Roma hooligans and the Napoli hooligans have links to the royalist faction in Italy that want to bring back the House of Savoy and have a monarchy again, and also there's a different form of right wing that isn't fascist but also is equally racist. It's really weird. The further north you go, the more left wing the ultras become, and that's also scary because they will have a dislike for the police. If you go to Sicily, it's they don't like the fact that the police is the centralized state. They're more regionalistic, and same with Sardinia. Their hooligan element is different. Italy's a very regional country. I've spent a lot of time out there. I've watched football games out there. It is sometimes terrifying when their ultras go for it. But ironically, with the rise of the hooligan element in some parts of Europe, crowd numbers are actually down, and some leagues are losing attendance because mainstream fans are staying away, and families are staying away, and participation is falling. So with the rise of hooligan elements, ironically, it's harming. It's like English football in the 70s. Attendances are dropping across all leagues across Europe. In the main, some of the major leagues, Serie A attendance is down. Some of the German, I think, second and third tier attendance is down. Turkish league attendance is down. Greek league attendance is down. Mainstream fans are staying away because of the violent element. It doesn't look good for TV. It makes the headlines. It overshadows what could be a great game. But when players are getting death threats and when games are being cancelled, because I think one of the Greek team owners, I think, is it AOK, ran on the pitch with a revolver and threatened to shoot the referee last season. So there is a violent element with European football that makes English football's violence and racism and homophobia and abuse of players and death threats to players actually look pretty amateur. The issue we have with hooligans is nowhere near as bad as what it was when I was a kid. There is still an element there, but with the amount, with the second most surveilled country after the US with security cameras and facial recognition, and police powers that they actually have now are actually some of the strictest when it comes to batting orders. The European system is they'll go with the truncheons. They will just grab the first goal they grab. Even if you haven't thrown the first punch, you're nicked. You're spending 5 years in prison, but that's it. No. The Premier League does have hooligan element. It's because the Premier League is one of the most televised and watched leagues in the world. They can't really get away with it anymore. Most of the hooligan scraps that you actually get are covered up with gangland scraps that you get on the estate. Yeah. But there is still a hooligan element to Premier League and Championship clubs. They're two of the most watched leagues in the world for viewership. But the amount of cameras at games now, the amount of police at games now, most of the hooligan element is very contained. Whereas in Europe, the policing's different. They go in with the truncheon, they go in with the rubber bullets, they go in the tear gas. It leads to severe injuries, it leads to deaths. There is a hatred of authority from hooligans worldwide, but more so in some countries with the regional aspect, like the Corsicans in France, the Basques in Spain, the Catalans in Spain, the Bretons in France. Their clubs, their hooligan elements really don't like the centralised state. They don't like the police because that's an image of the state that they want to be independent from. Same with the Sardinians, same with the Sicilians. When they see that police uniform, that's also the enemy as much as the opposition team. But the worst, what sparked, I think, the worst Italian football violence in my lifetime was, I think, 2005, 2006. A whole match day weekend was called off after two police officers and a fan were murdered in cold blood. There was a Juventus, the most supported club in Italy, and there was a Juventus fan in the central Lazio region, which is basically where Rome is, so the middle of Italy, just casually walking down the road, because Juventus is supported nationwide. Obviously, it's a Turin club, but it's supported nationwide. It has 60% of Italian football fans are Juventus fans for membership. He was stabbed 37 times. That same night, two off-duty police officers in Sicily, in Catania, were gunned down during the Palermo-Catania Sicilian derby in their off-duty car. They had just finished shift. They were having a cup of coffee. whether it was a Catania or Palermo hooligan or hooligans, because of the mafia link down there, just shot them in cold blood. That then led to a wave of overhanded policing that weekend, which resulted in the Atalanta Inter game being called off before it even started, when fans ripped up the seating and smashed the plexiglass caging around the stadium in Atalanta. They decided to dismantle their own football stadium in Bergamo and have a riot. And that was the early kickoff that day. And so they decided, no, we're going to cancel all games because, Christ, we've lost control of the situation in the space of 48 hours. Because every game suddenly had the Carabinieri and standard state police and region and local police all turn up. They had the whole lot. They had the riot squad. They had the military police turn up. It turned into the fans, instead of fighting each other, decided wholeheartedly to turn on the police. And they were like, do we use live rounds? The police were also after blood, considering two of their colleagues had been murdered in cold blood, literally hours before. So the police were already after blood anyway. They were going to arrest anyone who was even looking at them the wrong way. And Italian police, for all the corruption in Italy, the Italian riot police are brutal. They will beat you half to death. They will. So all the ultras decided to just, instead of fight each other, turn on the police, which led to every single match in all professional leagues in Italy being called off. The same thing happened in Germany, where they cancelled all the lower league games after, I think, Dynamo Dresden fans burnt their stadium down pretty much. They were like, yeah, we're not going to play games this weekend. We'd rather not have loads of dead bodies. Yeah. The Dynamo Dresden fans, I think, were playing another club from Saxony in, I think, the third Bundesliga, so the third tier. And there was a 5,000 man riot, and the police went to the German FA, I think we might want to stop all matches this weekend just for safety reasons, because this is escalated. And the German hooligan element is worse in the lower leagues, in the regional leagues and the lower leagues. It's uncontrollable. Same in Poland. It's brutal. I've got friends from Poland. I've got friends from Gdansk. Legia Gdansk is the main team. The hooligan element out there is terrifying. It's tribal. I don't know what it is about football. It seems to be the worst sport for violence, but other sports are starting to get these elements. I've seen it at rugby league. I've seen it at ice hockey, not just here in the UK, but overseas as well. I've seen it in the NRL. I've seen it in the NHL and NFL and Major League Baseball. I've seen fans fight. Normally, alcohol is involved in North America when it comes to fan fights, whereas in Europe it's more general hatred of the other team. Yeah. Oh, there is an element. I'm not so sure about basketball because that's more of a club sport. When it comes to European clubs, it's actually generally the sporting club will not only have the football, soccer element, it would also have the badminton, the tennis, the cycling, the swimming, and things like that. And it's generally when you are a member of a club, you are from your locale, so you'll play amateur and professional and all sorts. I think it's more in the working class sports you're seeing this element of violence. So rugby league, working class sport. And rugby league's very popular in France, and the French fans have gone at it with Warrington fans this past couple of seasons. They've had it off in the stands with punch-ups. Ice hockey, while it does have its origins as the actually in the UK, ironically, but Canada's made it its national sport. It's played almost by everyone. Yeah, there is an element there as well. There's a very small element, but it can get pretty violent, I've seen. But a lot of the North American fan fights are generally alcohol-based, and sometimes within the same fan group. The Oakland Raiders like fighting each other. It's hilarious. Their fans are lunatics. I don't know. I like the fact that rugby union and generally mostly speaking, in North America, the fans can mix and mingle, and the banter's quite good. But North Americans and alcohol just don't mix very well. Yes, in the Cricket World Cup, Indian, Pakistani, Afghani, and Bangladeshi fans all clashed in Birmingham this summer. So there is issues with cricket as well. It's not just a football thing. But I think segregation shows that it's failed, as in the sport itself has failed to root out the problem of disorder. And we have seen some leagues and some sports bring alcohol stadium bans in place, and the SFA in Scotland want to scrap that ban. They want to allow alcohol to be sold at football matches again, which is suicide. The SPL SFA banned alcohol sales at football matches in Scotland, and now they want to reintroduce alcohol sales at Scottish football matches. Scotland, which has an issue with a hooligan problem. The Raiders fans will fight anyone, including themselves, but I like the mingling. But if you're going from Oakland, or soon to be Vegas, to Philadelphia, going across the country, not many of the Raider Nation will be travelling. Their home support is more fanatical than their away support. But at the same time, you get less away fans in the North American leagues because of the size of the country and the travel distances. So in that sense, unless it's a very local rival, let's say the New York teams are playing each other, for example, in whatever sport, or LA teams, the actual chances of disorder are normally alcohol-based between fans. It doesn't matter what, if you're a neutral or supporting a home or away team, it's generally alcohol-based. Yeah, I have to admit, Australia, rugby league, you don't segregate the fans that we do in rugby league here in Europe, where we do segregate the fans. Still means disorder happens, though. But it does worry me that my uncle Mark is on my YouTube. This is terrifying. My uncle Mark is not a sports fan. The fact that he is deciding on a sports podcast to say Happy New Year is troubling. My uncle Mark is not a sports fan. So Monkey is my uncle Mark. He's never been a sports fan. My granddad once took him to football. He would rather play hopscotch than actually watch the game. He would rather read a book or whatever he was doing than actually watch the football. Never really big sports fan. Not because he necessarily didn't like it. He just wasn't very good and that didn't interest him. So my uncle Mark ended up going to art school and setting up his own fashion wholesale business that I worked for a brief period. And his wife's a fashion designer. And he's more arts and craftsy. So the fact he is on a sports YouTuber's thing is terrifying me because I'm now a bit embarrassed. But yeah, hello, Uncle Mark. How you doing? Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. Hopefully all is well. I've also moved now. As you can tell, I'm not at home anymore. And I'm going to have to move again due to... I hate football. I hope everyone loses. Actually, you'll be surprised. This channel, we don't like football very much. Most of the sport we discuss is not football related. The football doesn't get a lot of positive praise on this channel, ironically. But yes, he does hate football. He hopes everyone loses. My uncle told me a very funny story once. He got caught up in a football riot without realising. He got off the tube in London and he was basically accosted by a police officer with a police dog. And my uncle was a punk in the 80s and looked a bit like Billy Idol. Not your stereotypical football hooligan. He didn't know what was going on. Now, his mate lived right by, I believe it was Millwall's Den. So, a rough bit of London anyway. I believe it was the Den. The old Den, not the new Den. Anyway, my uncle's got off the tube and he's trying to work his way through London. He got caught up with a hooligan gang, and then the police pulled a police dog and a baton on him, and he didn't know what was going on. And he really genuinely was like, "I'm trying to get to my friend's flat. I'm lost. I'm not a football fan. I hate football. I hope everyone loses." And that was generally his response. And he had an angry police dog and a very angry copper with a truncheon basically telling him to back off. And he generally didn't know what was going on. That's my uncle's last experience with football. Was in the 80s, and he didn't have an absolute clue what was going on and was generally like half cut anyway, and he didn't know what was going on. It was hilarious. The story's funny being told by him, but sadly, unfortunately, now my uncle is not in the best of health, so he can't work anymore. But yeah, he was never really a sports fan. So my uncle Mark, or Monkey, was never really a sports fan. But ironically, football doesn't get a lot of positive praise on this channel. And no, he doesn't drink anymore either, so pub darts is possibly the worst suggestion you could give my uncle, because he's blind in one eye and has unfortunately had a brain injury, so counting is difficult. So you've given him possibly the worst sport to play because he can't see out of one eye and he had a brain injury, so therefore concentration and knowing what's going on is a problem at times. But it's good to see that he's actually following the old YouTube, and I will tell Mum that you've said hello and everything, and tell Nan that you said hello as well, because they haven't heard from you in a while, and it'd be nice, to know that you're doing okay. I've been ill for the best part of a couple of weeks with a chest infection, so I'm not doing great, and my flat's got leaks everywhere, and it's damp, and I've got black mold, and all sorts. Oh, no need to apologise. My uncle's my uncle. He's a bit of a Burke anyway. We love him, but he's a Burke. And yeah, it's my uncle. What can I say? I'm allowed to abuse him. Oh, you are going down the pub. Oh, God. Oh, I thought you didn't drink. Oh, to be fair, I'm going down the pub in a bit as well because I'm going to my local, so I can't really say I don't drink. I will be staying sober tonight, but I am also going to the pub in a bit as well. But good to hear from you, Uncle Mark, and I will let Mum and Nan know that you're doing okay and that you're going out, and stay safe this time. Yes, last time you went to the pub, it didn't end so well, did it? So I want you to stay safe, enjoy your night, get home safe, and say hello to Auntie Asui and the kids, and blah 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 blah, etc. 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 And have a good night, Uncle Mark, and we shall see you soon. So that is the first time a relative has come on one of my live streams and embarrassed the fuck out of me. Oh, that was awkward. I had to be careful what I had to say then. Oh God. Not the pubs my uncle goes to. My uncle is very selective where he drinks. Well, he doesn't drink alcohol anymore, but he's very selective about what pubs he goes to and who he socialises with and the circle that he keeps. Not a lot of his friends like football either. So he's very selective where he goes, and he's always been like that. But unfortunately, what was it, 2014, he ended up getting into a bit of a scrap and had a brain injury and lost sight of one eye and nearly lost his life and had a bleed on his brain. He's got a metal skull now. They sort of rebuilt his head. So he's got a big metal plate in his head. So I call him Phantom of the Opera. But he has had some health issues the last 10 or so years, and then his head injury has affected his health and memory and bits and pieces like that. So he's not the man he was pre-2014 May, which is a real shame because some of his drinking stories are hilarious when he used to drink. Really funny. Some of the stuff we got up to, absolutely, I can't repeat on the channel. I will insist. I cannot repeat on this channel because YouTube will ban me. We came up with a fun drinking game that involves walking through Soho and, spotting a certain street worker and counting how many would approach you for work. You had to turn them down, obviously, but it's a funny game, but we cannot discuss it on this channel. But it is funny that the game we used to play, and it involved drinking as well. And the loser had to buy the winner an excessive amount of alcohol and pay for it. The Vegas and sports franchises, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a disaster because now they've legalized and regulated sports gambling across the US and gambling in general. It's now legal in every state, every jurisdiction. Vegas actually has it's more of a family-based city now than what it was. It's more than just tourism. A lot of industries have moved there. A lot of companies have regional and head offices there. I know this through friends and one of my ex-partners. It's not the disaster it could have been 20 years ago. Here's the thing. In the state of New Jersey, you have Atlantic City. The New Jersey Devils play up the coast in Newark, which is technically part of the New York metropolitan area. Legalized gambling has been allowed in Chicago in casinos for years. But only certain jurisdictions outside of Nevada were allowed to legalize gambling. And it had to be a city ordinance, not a state ordinance. And this is what I do know. Yes, you could say the conflict of interest, but then again, we've had legalized and regulated gambling here since the 60s. So what are you getting at? The fact Vegas got a team is there was an ownership group who put forward the Vegas Golden Knights about 5-6 years ago in the bidding process. Okay. And it wasn't gambling based. It was an entertainment because Vegas also has the entertainment business as well. Massive. There's film studios. There's TV studios in Vegas. There's a lot of industry and head offices have gone to Vegas because it's cheap to build there. It's a rapidly growing city. It's more than just the strip. It's more than just tourism. There's a lot going on in Vegas. There's a lot of mines in Nevada for silver and other ores in the desert. You need an urban area to have offices for these mining companies. There's banks in Vegas. Gambling is not as big in Nevada as it was. Ironically, even though Reno and Vegas are two of the biggest gambling cities in the world, it's not as big an income maker as it was when gambling was fully regulated in Nevada to attract investment. Ironically, Nevada was so underpopulated That's why prostitution and gambling were legal when the rest of the US it wasn't, was to encourage, well, get tax dollars, because to make the state viable, ironically. And Vegas used to be a Mormon city, so I can do a whole history of Vegas on the other channel. It's really funny. It's really interesting and really, really funny as well. But the US government has decided to completely regulate gambling for the tax revenue as well. There's a lot of tax revenue there. It's how they make some money. And yes, I do agree gambling is I don't gamble anymore. I really dislike the microtransactions in video games as well. I have in my lifetime got a positive gambling to loss ratio, win-loss ratio. I've actually made more money than I've lost gambling. I just choose not to do it anymore. I got to a certain point and I was like, nah, I'm done. I don't even bet on the Grand National anymore. Something that I have a very good record in my adult life of winning money on. I don't even bet Royal Ascot anymore. Again, really good record with the horses. I don't do it anymore. I've got a good record on fruit machines as well. I don't do it anymore. I used to be a poker player and play in a poker league that had qualifiers for the TV tournaments where you could win. I think the minimum win was £250,000 for topping your qualification pool to the televised tournament qualification. £250,000. It's a lot of money. Don't do that anymore. So, yes, I do agree gambling and sports is a dangerous mix. The reason why Vegas got an NHL team and the reason why Vegas got an NFL team is ownership. It's got nothing to do with gambling at all. Nothing, ironically. The ownership groups of both the Raiders and the Golden Knights have got nothing to do with gambling. There are no casinos that have any stakes in those ownership groups. Those owners have made their money in other industries. So the reason why those leagues accepted those relocation of the Raiders and the expansion of the Vegas Golden Knights was because of the money the owners were going to bring in. And the fact that Vegas was an untapped market, which is a sports mad city. You got boxing, wrestling, MMA, all these one-off events have been hosted in Vegas. You had a ready arena in Vegas. And the investment of building a new football stadium in Vegas is creating jobs in the construction industry that weren't in Nevada before. But yes, I understand the concerns about gambling, but other countries have had legalized gambling for years. And professional sports for years. Some jurisdictions do not allow sports betting, as in the sense of the company names on sports shirts. So France, alcohol and gambling firms are not allowed to advertise during sports events. Unfortunately, in Britain, the major sporting leagues and sporting events have taken a lot of money after the tobacco ban from gambling firms to compensate for the loss of revenue. Now, smoking is a horrific habit, and I'm trying to quit. But tobacco is also used in pesticides. So tobacco firms are not just selling your fags and vapes and stuff. They're also making and manufacturing pesticides to kill aphids. So crops and farmers benefit. That's the ironic thing that a lot of people don't realize is nicotine is poisonous to aphids and other insects. That's why when you go to the Mediterranean countries, you'll see tobacco plants in the corner of each field. And around the field, where they could be growing corn, they could be growing wheat, they could be growing tomatoes, strawberries. You'll see tobacco plants placed around the field. Those farmers aren't manufacturing tobacco for sale to make cigars and cigarettes. No. They are doing it as a natural pesticide, ironically. I understand with the trivia with the US, Utah, that's completely understandable because in the 1840s, a lot more Irish and English potato famine affected not just Ireland, but also the rest of the UK as well. And people tend to forget that. So a large amount of immigration. They needed farmers in Utah because of the rolling prairies. They needed settlers, and the British government encouraged people to leave Highland Scotland, the Highland clearances, and Northern England, the West Country, and Ireland went and Wales went to Utah, where there's a lot of sheep farming, ironically. Yes, the F1 teams had tobacco sponsorship later than the other sports teams did. Yes, the F1 teams did, and motorsport did for an extra couple of years. The UK is not the biggest gambling country for revenues, although a lot of the gambling firms are British-based. But not all. A lot of them, not all. Ladbrokes is now, and William Hill and Coral, they're all global gambling firms now. And they have various gambling departments and in North America and Asia and Europe, but they're not for percentage of revenues. Asia, Southeast Asia makes more money both legitimately and illegitimately, and there's a lot of countries that still have it as illegal, and the countries that still have it as illegal have the highest rates of illegal gambling and match fixing, ironically. So legalizing it, yes, it could create a conflict of interest, but it also regulates. So when you do have that match fix and the illegal gambling, the sentences and punishments are harder. So that's another reason why they regulated it, was to take organized criminals out of the loop a little bit and make it easier to prosecute those who are running illegal gambling. But now you can gamble in your house legally and not get in trouble for it and all sorts in the US. But yeah, I can understand people's concerns. But Vegas got sports teams not because of gambling. It was because of ownership deciding this is an untapped location. We know that there's a big interest in sports in Vegas. It's an underutilized market for TV. It's a fast-growing city. It's more than just gambling and tourism. There is a construction industry there. There is mining in Nevada for silver and gold, and there has been in the past. It's a rapidly growing city. It's a youthful city, disposable income. There's more than just gambling and tourism in that city. A lot of head offices, a lot of banks, a lot of factories. Actually, if you look at the greater Vegas area, the Strip is actually tiny. The greater city of Las Vegas and the greater urban areas, there's lots of factories and warehouses, and there's a big airport, and it's a trade hub and all sorts. It's on a major railroad and crossroads and all sorts of things. So yeah, there is a bit more to Vegas than just the glitzy casinos on the Strip. I will mention that now. It's a very young, cosmopolitan city as well, very multinational, multi-ethnic city as well. It's not just what you think it is. But I understand the concerns with gambling and sports, and we've discussed that on the channel many, many times about the concern of match fixing, conflict of interest. Rob Howley in the rugby union getting sent home in disgrace before the World Cup from the Welsh camp and replaced with Stephen Jones. Gambling offences and breach of the code of conduct of rugby, and the breach of betting regulations, which the betting companies actually red flagged him. It wasn't any of his colleagues or the players. It was the betting company said, you know, where this guy is a sports coach and he's come up with his own personal account gambling on sports events, be it rugby. We don't know what he was gambling on, but it's red flagged. And they alerted the interested parties saying this guy's on a red flag list for certain sports. He was gambling on rugby, I believe. He was placing bets in build-up to the World Cup on who was going to finish where and bits and pieces. So, yeah, that's how legalized gambling works. When you're involved in sports and you come up using your personal account online to gamble rather than actually going into a betting shop anonymously and paying in cash, you foul up. So Rob Howley clearly had a gambling problem. Out in Japan, gambling's a little bit frowned upon, but it's legal. He's obviously gone online. He's obviously used his personal credit card number. It's flagged up. Oh, this is Rob Howley. He's a Welsh assistant coach. Oh dear. That's a big red flag. The authorities were informed and he lost his job 6 weeks early. It's a shame, but he lost his job. And at one point, until Wayne Pivac was announced as Gatland's successor, he was groomed to be Gatland's successor. So whether he had a long-term issue, so questions will be asked of Gatland and the senior playing group and other coaches. When all the truth comes out, questions will be asked of the integrity of the Welsh setup, which is a problem, which is an unnecessary distraction. And Stephen Jones has come in, and I think that's where that will help Wayne Pivac. But questions will be asked of not just Rob Howley, but Gatland's integrity as well, of what he did and didn't know. But I think, there you go. There's a prime example of how gambling and sports, do work at catching out those who breach the rules, but at the same time, yet the conflict of interest and the issues that gambling and sports have going hand in hand. Snooker, prime example of match fixing, and the Asian market and match fixing. Lots of Chinese players and other players getting linked to match fixing allegations, getting bans. Done a few videos on that. I mean, Stuart Bingham's another one. Stephen Lee. A couple of Chinese players who are reasonably high profile in the sport. Snooker's grown massively in the last about 2 decades. The Hearn family promoting it. The rise of ranking tournaments, the rise of the growth of the game in China. Where do you want me to go with this? But I'm going to leave that there because I actually have to get ready to go out. Obviously, it is New Year's Eve. I am going to my mate's pub. I am seeing a few friends on New Year's Eve. I'm going to try and brave this chest infection. I'm going to be on the soft drinks. I'm being sensible. I'm going to take my medication, have a bite to eat. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for a lot of interesting questions. It's been a really, really good live stream. And even my uncle popped in to say hello, and he hates sport. So that tells you something. Thank you very, very, very much. The snooker. The snooker. He's about to pot. Yeah, he's about to pot. The cash. Yeah, snooker does have an issue with match fixing. Cricket, another sport, massive problems with match fixing. Srisanth, Indian cricketer, in jail at the moment. Hansi Cronje, South African, obviously got found out, lied in front of a parliamentary inquiry under oath in South Africa. And I mean, South Africa's a corrupt country, but this is after apartheid when Mandela was in charge and corruption actually dropped off. He lied under oath to the South African Parliament and to the South African judges on the panel under oath. He then admitted that he lied, and then within a few months he was suspiciously plane crash. So yeah, Hansi Cronje and Srisanth are two high-profile cricketers who not only were spot fixing but actually deliberately throwing games and deliberately throwing no-ball bowling. The Pakistan England Test series in 2010, Salman Butt and all that. We can mention a lot of sports that have these scandals. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate all the questions as always. Happy New Year if it already is New Year, and if you are expecting the New Year to come roll in, enjoy the festivities tonight, and we'll have a video tomorrow about what we've got to look forward to in 2020 with sport. I will try and get the whiteboard out, I think, and get that up and running and go through the big sports events of 2020 that I'm looking forward to, and that I think you guys will be looking forward to as well. And for now, good night, goodbye, and have a great New Year's.